Can we go to the Vaqueros hotline and get some in-depth conversation about the Alabama Crimson Tide with someone who knows his stuff? He is from BamaOnline.com. He's been covering the Tide since '03 and is covering them to this day. He is Travis Reier. He's on Twitter at Travis Reier. Travis is his first name, last name Reier. Travis Reier is with us. Travis, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys this morning?
We're doing good, man. We're doing good. Hey, Rod, what's your biggest question for Alabama and Texas in this game you have for Travis right here?
Really? It's about Jalen Milroe, Travis. How do you think that Alabama's going to use Jalen Milroe in the quarterback run game? And even, in the pass game, what do you think they're trying to weaponize him in what fashion?
Yeah, I think we're certainly going to see more of Jalen in design quarterback run situations than we did in the opener against Middle Tennessee. I think he carried 7 times in that game. He was sacked on 2 of those. And just 2 others were really runs that you could look at and say, yeah, the quarterback was in mind in that situation. One was on a touchdown run off a zone read, and then the other off a quarterback sneak from under center. So, Tommy Rees's background as an offensive coordinator previously at Notre Dame, ironically enough, where he most recently worked with Tyler Buckner, Alabama's backup quarterback these days, tells us that there's more in the bag from that perspective, and not just, again, in terms of the zone read game, but quarterback counters, quarterback powers. He's not afraid to expose the quarterback to those situations in the run game, and he should do that with Jalen. And I think he's going to need to, because I think this Texas defense, if you just want to try to line up and hand the ball to running backs, it's going to be tough. It was a year ago for Alabama.
Yeah, and that was Jahmyr Gibbs, who's now playing for the Detroit Lions, was one of those main running backs, had some big plays in that game, and no Bryce Young. Now it's Jalen Milroe. Travis, as we mentioned, you covered this team for a long time. You covered it for the entirety of the Nick Saban era, which has been dynastic. Where does this team for you stack up versus some of the other Alabama teams you covered?
Yeah, to be determined. I think talent-wise, in terms of just the roster, you can look at it and say, yeah, this is one of those teams. But I think there are still some questions to be answered. Here recently, it's involved more of the secondary depth, which a couple weeks ago I would have told you I thought was going to be a strength for this team and this defense, even with 3 safeties moving on to the National Football League from last year's group. But, they've had some injuries of late, had a couple of guys in Jalen Key and Malachi Moore get dinged up in the opener against MTSU. They were already down a safety, so that's obviously one of the big storylines this week, especially with the skill talent that Texas is going to put in front of them. And I think Alabama at the corners with Terry and Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry and also a transfer that they brought in Trey Amos from Louisiana can hold up pretty good. But again, the availability of a couple of key guys, both at safety and where their sub packages are concerned, is where you're a little bit worried for this Alabama defense right now. Offensively, it was great to see Jalen have the success he had, especially in the pass game against MTSU. But I think if we're being honest, I think a lot of people out there are saying, okay, let's see him do it against a defense like Texas, because he really had his ups and downs against A&M last season in the start against a legitimate Power 5 group. So, there's still some blanks that need to be filled in for this team.
Travis, what are your thoughts about the wide receiving core? In years recently, we've seen the Alabama wide receiving core just littered with NFL first-round caliber talent. We know they got some great players in their wide receiving group, but who are the guys that Texas fans should be concerned about who may be highlighted and featured on that game on Saturday?
Yeah, a lot of the same guys that they saw in last year's game, and it wasn't the best of performances for Alabama's receivers in that one. Jermaine Burton is back. Ja'Cory Brooks is back. They've added some pieces there as well. Malik Benson coming in from the junior college ranks. Jalen Hale is a Texan, as a true freshman that they are very high on. And if you ask me about potential first-round guys, he might be at the top of my list. Now, he's still a few years down the road, but just in terms of big picture viability as a pro, he might be that guy. So, they feel really good about their inside receivers. Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice. Prentice had 4 catches against Texas last year. So there's a lot of depth, a lot of returning depth, but they got a lot to prove too. I know a lot of this is being put on Jalen Milroe, but The receivers have to be better than they were a year ago. They were good in the opener against Middle Tennessee, but again, this is a sort of show me game for that position on this team.
Yeah, you got Jace McClellan, the Texan, at running back. There's another one in Jam Miller, the sophomore, is a Texan. A lot of Lone Star talent on this Alabama roster that will host the Longhorns. As we said, only the first matchup in Tuscaloosa between these two since 1902. Pretty incredible. So the defense, it's always a Nick Saban staple. The defensive line, we know the linebackers and Chris Braswell is back. Dallas Turner is back. Those guys can wreak havoc. Who are the guys up front? Because the Texas offensive line struggled last week a little bit with Rice, some confusion. Who are the war daddies up front for Nick Saban this year on the front?
Yeah, they're still trying to identify those guys. I mean, they like Jaheim Otis, the sophomore, who has proven to be versatile because they've been able to play him more at end so far this season, which has allowed for Tim Keenan to emerge in that defensive front. So they've got capable guys. Do they have dudes? We're still waiting to see on that one. Now, on the edges, you really like what they have at the outside linebacker position with Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. Even Q Robinson is a third guy. Did some nice things last week against MTSU. So I would expect more so if pressure's going to come from this Alabama front seven on Saturday night to Quinn Ewers, it'll probably be more from the linebacker level because I think both these defenses are going to work those A-gaps with some of these linebackers because pass protection where the running backs are concerned too, something that's going to be under the microscope. And up front, I think Alabama feels good about just in early downs and run situations that they've got guys that can get the job done. But as far as dynamic playmaker types like Quinnen Williams, like Deron Payne and some of those guys, still kind of waiting for those to emerge.
Hey, Travis, what about the the assimilation of the coordinators with Nick Saban? We know he's had a lot of turnover there because he's had a lot of success and teams are trying to poach his coaches all the time. He's got two new coordinators. Talk about the new systems they're bringing in and what they look like offensively and defensively.
Plenty of familiarity where Kevin Steele is concerned. This is his third stint with Nick in Tuscaloosa. So, that's been pretty seamless, I think. And I think there's been so much emphasis on back to basics, fundamentals, things that Alabama really didn't handle with aplomb last season, including the game in Austin where, so many penalties for that Alabama defense, even with the experience they brought back. So they've worked hard on cleaning that up. I think offensively, Tommy Rees and kind of his background meshes well with where Nick saw this offense going in the post-Bryce Young era with the change at quarterback and kind of looking at the potential strengths for this offense in comparison to the last few years. I think Tommy is matched up well from that standpoint. And, as a quarterback's coach, he's got a lot on his plate. He walked into a three-man race and he essentially added to it, I guess, with Tyler Buckner as the third. But, that's a big part of this, too, continued growth for five scholarship quarterbacks, which they're carrying right now.
Talking to Travis Reier with On3 Sports, BamaOnline.com. He's covered this program for a long, long time, 20 years now. What do you say to because you have seen the program so close, the rise and now where they are. After last year's 2-loss season, both came on the road, both came on the last play of the game. There were also a couple of close wins against Texas and Texas A&M and some others. Some are saying that Alabama's sliding back a little bit. Are you in that camp, or do you feel like that's overblown?
Yeah, I'm not ready to go there yet. This is a week of narratives, right? This is the narrative. If Texas is back, we're gonna truly find out on Saturday night. And conversely, if Texas is back, what does that mean for the narrative that maybe Alabama is in descent under Nick Saban relative to the impossible standard anyway that he has established, not relative really to anyone else in college football. But no, I think those are the things that are make this week intriguing too, is that, some questions or at least some partial answers to some questions should be revealed. And again, I don't see it in terms of the talent that is being acquired by Alabama on an annual basis. But at the end of the day, it is relative to that standard that he has established. 10-2 is 11-2 is essentially a failure, a missed opportunity on the college football playoffs. So that's the way the program is judged these days. And to be honest with you, I don't think Nick would have it any other way.
Don't disagree at all. How about the chess match, Travis? I mean, that's Sark v. Saban. I mean, they're familiar with one another, obviously. Neither showed very much on either side of the ball last week. How do you – and last year in this game here in Austin, felt like Sark had some things going early before Quinn Ewers got hurt. How do you see the chess match between the two head coaches?
Yeah, guys like Sark and Lane Kiffin, they always have hellacious scripts. Usually those first 15 or 20 plays, your defense is just trying to survive the script. And so I'm sure the Alabama defensive staff is expecting just a little bit of everything potentially, again, from a Texas offense that has the personnel to pretty much carry out whatever Sark wants to do or attempt to do anyway. So, that's why the opening 8-10 minutes of this game will be so intriguing to watch because, again, the potential that Sark has and that personnel group that he has to do some explosive things early. I think it's on Ewers to show he can connect in the deep passing game, and his receivers, they got to finish plays for him too. But that's the thing that I think, if Alabama can get through that first 8 to 10 minutes defensively and kind of get its feet under it behind that home crowd, I'm expecting a grinder anyway, kind of similar to last year's game. I'm not seeing this game in the 30s by any means. And so that's where, that's where the talent should take over at some point. And, kind of the styles of play offensively are going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, Travis, I happen to think I don't think any team's going to be able to run the ball with the traditional run game because of how stout the defensive fronts are. Is that what you're feeling when you're talking about this thing kind of being a struggle for both teams offensively a little bit?
Yeah, for Alabama, I don't think it has a choice but to get Jalen Milroe more involved in the design run game. So, I'm not thinking he's going to carry it 20 times, but I think he'll be 10 or more as far as running the football because I think you hit on it. Creativity, and Sark's good at that too. I mean, You saw the throwback screen for the touchdown last week. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the run game, but how you utilize your backs, scrimmage yards, things like that for the backs, both as receivers and runners. And also, of course, you got a couple of tight ends in this game that you saw last week can both really rip the seam between Amari Niblack for Alabama and then Jatavian Sanders for Texas. So there is just a lot to cover, and it's not just the run game, but, yeah, I'm with you. I think the yards are going to be hard between the tackles.
Last thing for me, Travis Reier, the quarterback matchup, obviously Quinn Ewers, we know he's been good, but also struggles against exotic coverages. And then Jalen Milroe, for our audience, when you saw him last year in there for Bryce Young when he was hurt, we know he can run it. We know what type of athlete he is. What gave him troubles last year when he had his moments behind Bryce?
I think it was just uncertainty, and perhaps the magnitude of the situation got him a little bit because the week before, as difficult as it is to come off the bench early in a game and be thrust into action, I think maybe for some guys it's beneficial to them that they just are thrown in there. They don't have time to really consider everything, it's more reactionary. But you go from that to a week lead up of you pretty much know you're the starter and everything that goes with that. I think there was some anxiety for Jalen. And so, that'll be a part of this too. Even with MTSU last week, what I wanted to see from Jalen was poise and composure and how he sort of managed things early in the game. And he did a great job of it. Different deal for a guy from Texas going against the team he was previously committed to. So that's something else early in the game. I think you keep an eye on for Alabama is Jalen within himself? Does he manage things efficiently? Does he not try to, hit the home run on every snap? Because that's where the turnovers can come from. And so take care of the football, run the offense efficiently. I think Tommy Rees, as we saw last week, is going to try to help him as far as pre-snap and getting plays in early, getting them up to the line of scrimmage earlier in the play clock. The checks are going to come from the sideline with Tommy up in the box. So that's sort of the process that they're working with Jalen right now. And I think at least in week one, it was beneficial to him.
Travis, great stuff, man. That's awesome. That's
Awesome.
just the preview we wanted for our audience. Getting ready for this game, as good as a look as we'll get at the Crimson Tide from that side. Thank you, Travis, so much. You can follow Travis on Twitter at Travis Reier, Reier. Easy to find and a great follow. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
All right, there you
Thanks,
go.
Travis.
All right, there's the deep dive from the Alabama side.
It kind of, it's kind of what we've been describing, that we think, basically it's going to come down to these two quarterbacks. And different styles of play, obviously, different ways to win. But I think the running games on both sides are going to be neutralized.
Tough.
It's going to be tough to do that. And he said, it's going to be tough to run in between the tackles. Yeah, but both defenses are also really fast.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to get to the edge really well either. And I think Texas has pretty good edge defenders, and we know Bama does too. So I think it's going to end up, it's going to look ugly at first. And I love what he said about survive the script. That's always on my notes about if you want to beat Sark, you better survive that script. Survive those first 20 plays, and Saban knows that. But then after that, I think it settles down, and then by the fourth quarter, it becomes a game about which quarterback can make plays. And it's about who makes the better adjustments, that chess match within the game, and that's going to be on Sark versus Nick Saban and company.
Yeah, and both fan bases, you just heard it from Travis, are not sure what their quarterback will do in those big moments.
Yeah, exactly.
Both,
we have no idea.
Both are uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a good preview right there.